Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. Going to be talking about the upcoming Royal Rumble. I can remember going back to November, thinking that there was a long string of time between Survivor Series and the Royal Rumble, and what they were going to do with WWE's Monday Night Raw, and how they were going to be able to go so long and make that show interesting and still be able to put out premium content that people are going to be able to stick with week to week. I know that a lot of people were sort of down on Monday Night Raw this week with the big Braun Strowman versus Kane match to deem the number one contender to Monday Night Raw. A lot of people thought that that was sort of a boring show. Some people had the same criticism of the week before. I've always gone back to when TNA got out of the pay-per-view game. They still had Bound for Glory, and I still think they kept two other shows. But what TNA would do was that they would basically hold pay-per-view style shows on television, a lot like what SmackDown does today. A lot of time you see like a few weeks go by, and then all of a sudden you see a jam-packed SmackDown with three really big matches. Most of the time you'll have a WWE Championship, an Intercontinental, and a tag title match. Almost like a mini pay-per-view. They're on the USA Network. I don't know if that's WWE trying to help out SmackDown, trying to help out the USA Network, trying to bring in a lot of viewers to a big show that's going down. We sort of saw the WWE Championship change hands between Jinder Mahal and AJ Styles right before Survivor Series. Almost that way, trying to sort of like bank out a big number right there before Thanksgiving. I thought that maybe Monday Night Raw would do that, sort of having just a really big Raw out of the middle of nowhere. As of right now, it looks like that Universal Championship match is going to be a three-way. You look a lot of the plans going around for WWE, of course, with the Elimination Chamber happening in February, right before WrestleMania. We know that the Royal Rumble winner will be able to pick the championship they want to go after at WrestleMania. I can't honestly think of anybody who's ever jumped brands and gone after a different belt other than the brand that they were already involved in. So it's time to start thinking about who the winner is going to be. And this ties in a little bit to the video I made about the Triple Threat, which is going to be going down at the Royal Rumble 2018, where you see Brock going up against Braun Strowman and Kane, which, of course, as of right now is subject to change, but I think that is going to be what the number one contender match is going to pan out to be. I don't know if they're going to end up doing Strowman and Kane again, or if they're just going to end up using it the way it was and make that to be it. But when you look at February, you see that they're going to have the Elimination Chamber match, and the word on the street is that Brock Lesnar is not scheduled to appear on that show because he is not advertised to appear on that show. That, to me, sort of leads the fact that sort of says that, hey, the Elimination Chamber is going to be a number one contenders match. The winner of that will go on to WrestleMania to fight against Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship. Of course, put the asterisk there. It could be Kane. Could be. Or it could end up being Braun Strowman. But that sort of says to me that, hey, start looking at SmackDown to find your winner of the Royal Rumble. Last year's Rumble, of course, was won by Randy Orton. A very forgettable Royal Rumble, although it was in the Alamo Dome, and it did have some really big names. Goldberg, Brock Lesnar, The Undertaker all appeared in this match. It went down in the Alamo Dome. It was looked at as supposed to being one of the biggest Royal Rumbles of all time, but with Orton winning, and Orton, of course, going up against Bray Wyatt at the Elimination Chamber, to me, honestly, was sort of a very forgettable Royal Rumble. Most people will remember the AJ Styles versus John Cena match that went down over the Royal Rumble there. And the Rumble, to me, honestly, is always supposed to be the main event, the biggest thing that goes down on the entire show, with the surprise entrance, which I'm honestly very surprised that we haven't heard any. But then again, other than going out and finding some past WWE talent that's out there on the independent scene, as of right now, just about anybody who's involved in wrestling is already going to be under WWE contract, or they're going to be under contract to New Japan, or going to be on with whatever you're calling Impact, TNA, Global Force Wrestling these days. So I think it's going to be hard to find some names that are big names to come in there. I mean, WWE being able to snatch up AJ Styles and have him debut on the Rumble, it's probably going to be one surprise for the books. It's probably going to be one of the biggest ones, honestly, for a long time. I think that in this Royal Rumble, you got to look down the SmackDown roster to see who's going to be going after your championship. As of right now, AJ Styles is your champion. He's going to be going up against Jinder Mahal at the upcoming Clash of the Champions pay-per-view. I think that's a lock for AJ to be able to win that. But then again, they just did one, but you could always see AJ lose that championship on the road to WrestleMania or on the road to Royal Rumble with one of those jam-packed SmackDowns that we were talking about. But sort of as of right now, plans can always change. Of course, last year at the Elimination Chamber, we had Bray Wyatt winning the WWE Championship, which was sort of a really big surprise. And he ended up going up against Randy Orton, which was the breakup of the Wyatts on the road to WrestleMania. And we'll have to see what can go down. But, who out there could face AJ Styles at WrestleMania and be one of the biggest matches of all time? John Cena, as a member of SmackDown, he could win the Rumble. Every WrestleMania will always sort of be looked at as John Cena's last WrestleMania. We have to look back to WrestleMania 29 to really have a high-profile John Cena match on WrestleMania. Of course, WrestleMania 30, he fought against Bray Wyatt. 31, he was against Rusev. 32, he was involved with The Rock. And then, of course, 33, he ended up doing the mixed tag with Maurice and The Miz. I honestly think that John Cena winning the Rumble, I think that he'll be a part of it. I think he is making his return on the Christmas edition of Monday Night Raw. He's always going to be a factor. I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow figured into the Final Four. But I think that John Cena winning the Rumble might be some sort of a long shot. Jinder Mahal, even though right now he's in the WWE Championship shot, I think that he might be a pretty long shot to win and go to WrestleMania to face AJ Styles. Heck, they might even go with AJ versus Jinder yet once again at the Rumble if they don't have any plans for there. When I look down, of course, there's some rising stars on SmackDown. You've always got to think about, I thought The Miz was on SmackDown, but he's on Raw with The Miztourage. But, there's Bobby Roode, there's Baron Corbin. I think that they're honestly kind of long shots to win the Rumble as well. Randy Orton having a repeat victory doesn't really seem like it's bound to happen. Although if Randy does turn heel and go up against AJ, that probably would be a fresh match that I can't think I've seen happening, at least on my television. If it has happened, I think that I might have missed it. You got to think about where they're going with the Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn storyline. As of right now, those guys are sort of paired together, but who knows? They could wind up in the Final Four of the Royal Rumble, and one of those guys could turn on the other guy as well. I think that honestly both of those guys would be long shots. I know that Kevin Owens was on paper supposed to wrestle in the Universal Championship match against Chris Jericho, which ended up being scrapped because of how big Goldberg's return was at Survivor Series. They ended up having that match over the United States Championship instead. But when I run through all those names of SmackDown, the one guy that I think that stands alone that needs to win the Royal Rumble to have that big match at WrestleMania needs to be the man that just came over from New Japan, wrestled his way through NXT, now on the main roster, even though he did have 3 shots at the WWE Championship on 3 various pay-per-views this year and came up empty against Jinder Mahal in all of those, would be Nakamura. To me, honestly, people, when Nakamura ended up going to SmackDown, thought that he was going to be the new face of WWE. He would sort of be moving into that John Cena role. And even though he's been in the title picture and had some big matches along the way, I think that honestly, Nakamura winning the Rumble and going to WrestleMania, wrestling against a guy like AJ Styles, who he's had various feuds with through New Japan Pro Wrestling, wrestling at Wrestle Kingdom 8, no, I apologize. AJ versus Nakamura would have been Wrestle Kingdom 9, I believe, which I think that ended up being both of... Well, I think Nakamura ended up wrestling a little bit longer, but it was AJ Styles' last match in New Japan, besides for showing up the next night on the the show after, which is like the Raw after WrestleMania, and getting beat up by Kenny Omega. And then they never had the Omega versus AJ Styles matchup. Just sort of Omega took over the leadership of the Bullet Club. I think that's a big match. I think it's a big match for WWE. I think that's a big match for wrestling, and it's a big match that sort of appeals to those New Japan fans who, they're really looking at, joining, or they're really looking at moving the number in worldwide figures for the WWE Network. And I think that honestly, you do WrestleMania, I think that the fans in Japan are going to, see that show regardless. But I think the people that see AJ Styles versus Nakamura as a WrestleMania main event, I think that that's going to move the numbers where people who were friendly going to be, joining the network would join the network even if it's only for the one night to see that match. Nakamura for the win at the Royal Rumble.